We do have another caller on the line. We have William from Texas. William?
Should we consider Hades and Earth to be one and the same place?
So could the point be made?
What does verses 17 and 18 mean?
John the Baptist?
Not Christian.
Great question. Great question. Hello and welcome again to GBN Live. We've been off the last couple of weeks. We're so glad to be back on the air with you. We want to encourage you to tune in to our broadcast for the next hour as we discuss the benefits and dangers of summer camp. Many of our kids have been going to camp for many, many years, and we're going to be talking about camp in this next hour. I want to begin tonight by encouraging you that you might have a telephone call that you'd like to make with regard to a question, a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Our telephone number is 662-874-5508. You could email us at gbnlive@gbntv.org, or you can tweet us at #GBNLive. Again, our topic tonight, the benefits and dangers of summer camp. And we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. As we begin tonight, let me just take this time to introduce our guest. We have with us tonight Mike Green. And Mike, so good to have you with us. I know that you've been involved in camp work since 1973.
Yes, sir, a long time, and it's a joy to be here. I tell you, it's just a thrill to be on GBN.
Now, I know that you have your roots in Kentucky with regard to the Big Reedy camp.
Right.
And I know that that is in Butler County, Kentucky. Talk a little bit about your background with this camp.
Okay. Well, that background with the camp goes all the way, like I say, back to 1973. I've worked with 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th camp. And this Big Reedy Christian Camp is a camp that we built from scratch. One of our deacons gave us 34 acres. He got fired up. We took him to camp. He'd never been to camp. He thought camp was just babysitting. And he went as a counselor one year, and his wife went to cook. And I mean, he just got eat up with it. And about 2 years later, he said, that farm out there is going to go to waste. And I had told him before, great place to build a camp. So he ran with it.
How about that?
And we built a camp, and it's, as I was telling you earlier, it's 100% paid for, 221 person capacity, 16 cabins, or 10 cabins, 16 beds in each cabin, fully heated and air conditioned, use it year round.
How about that?
And 16 beds in each cabin, 160 kids in the cabins and people in the cabin, then 60 beds in the basement of the lodge.
So you said this camp operates year-round?
It can.
Okay.
We had 9 weeks of summer Bible camp, week-long Bible camps, and our business model is we just supply the facility. A lead congregation rents it, and then they get sister congregations in to go in with them. They staff it, bring the kids.
How about that?
And we provide the facility, but then we also rent it out for retreats. We've had 3 weddings there.
Really?
And we rented out on a weekend. We had it rented 19 weekends last year for retreats.
Okay. I'm just curious, what kind of cost is involved per camper?
That's a good question. Per camper. See, we don't. That's not our business model. We rent it for $3,500 for a week of camp.
Okay.
And $500 a night for a weekend. So if you come in on Friday and stay till Sunday, it's $1,500. So you'd have to figure that out. Now, but our week of camp, we assess that's about $105.
Okay.
Which compares very, very favorably with some of the other camps that I know of.
I mean, you know, when you talk about facilities like that for $105, that's pretty cheap.
It is, but we have some cooks and other people that just, and congregations, when you have a lead congregation and sister congregations, then they can go to the congregation and say, bring us cereal.
Sure.
And so we don't have to buy the cereal and stuff like that.
That's nice. That's nice.
But
Listen,
it's really neat.
appreciate you being on the program tonight.
Good. Thank you. Be here.
We also have with us Ray Pack, and Ray has been involved with the Horizons Camp near Freed-Hardeman University. And Ray has been involved in this work for the last 11 years. He's been on the planning committee for 4 years. Talk a little bit about the Horizons, if you would, for just a moment or two.
Horizons is a week-long camp on campus, always the first full week of July. And it also, it gives, what it does is, it's not your typical summer camp. Horizons is what we call a leadership camp.
Okay.
It started about 36 years ago as a future preacher training seminar, and it's evolved.
Okay.
And Mike talks about capacity at Big Reedy. This year we had 1,002 campers and 220 something staff members.
Wow.
And we were maxed out. It's our biggest year ever. And of course we're right there on campus. It gives kids a campus life, all those types of things. But it's really a great program for someone who's trying to build the church of the future with young leaders, both men and women.
Okay. So,
Mike, the beauty of this, we had a number of kids that went to our camp that also went to Horizons.
Really?
It's complementary because generally a summer Bible camp, you're going to have a lot of sports activities and Bible classes where they have, like he says, leadership.
It's more intensive. It's
much
more intensive in the Bible study.
And
I've got to mention, because Mike mentioned the deacon that built the camp there.
Sure.
He came down to Horizons 3 years ago and brought a group of kids. And on just the first impression he had, he said, I like what you're doing. And he's been on our staff the last 2 years.
Is that right?
He's our staff photographer. He's a great photographer, and he loves every minute of it. So, just a little bit of exposure for an individual to be at camp, and then now all of a sudden he's involved not only Big Reedy, but he's involved with Horizons. And so, we kind of network, and we never try to compete with the summer Bible camps because, like I say, it's totally different.
Sure. Do me a favor. Maybe walk our viewing audience through a typical day at Horizons.
A typical day at Horizons. I'll just start with Monday. Of course, there's always wake-up time. I have to have wake-up time, but the morning begins with a session with Jerry Elder, Webb Williams. It's to really get the kids' blood flowing, get them wide awake, and then we go to the admissions folks of Freed Hardeman come in and they do a promotion. And then we go into our morning devotional period, which is about a 20-minute program. Then we break out for classes. This year, our male speaking classes were the first class of the year. And then we follow that up with a class. It's a leadership class where each grade, they get 4 different lessons from 4 different teachers through the course of the week. And then you have free time, and then you gather back together at 6:30 for evening worship, and then you have nighttime activities.
Okay.
So it's real structured, and we do have one other class period. We give electives now. This is the first year for the girls that we have done this, that they were actually offered electives. On the young men's side, what we try to do is to focus on areas in which they can serve in a servant capacity within the church. And we have one elective class that deals with contemporary concerns for the more advanced students. We've added some classes. We have a class that we titled it Setting the Addict Free, which deals with helping folks with addictions.
Sure.
And we limit that to 11th and 12th graders because of some of the sensitive topics that are spoken on. So any parent that's out there listening, please understand that's not 6th graders, that's the older kids that get that class. So you got a wide spectrum of these classes that we try to provide.
One of the things that you mentioned a moment ago, and if, in just a minute or two, Mike, I'd like you to walk us through a typical day at your camp, but when you mention servanthood, I think that somewhere along the line, the church has missed the concept of servanthood. And so, to me, anytime you bring young folks together and you're teaching them to be servants of the Lord, I think that that's going to benefit and bless the church. It's going to be a blessing to them as well.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things we do at our camp, and not every Christian camp will do this, but one of the things we do at our camp is we take the oldest kids and we break the campers up by a blind draft and put them on a team, and these oldest kids are the team captains.
Okay.
And they are responsible for leading the younger kids, getting them where they're supposed to be, helping to get competition going and this kind of thing. Now, we always have adults nearby, but they don't run the thing, they don't play in the games. And the older,
like a big brother.
Yeah, and the older kids, you're talking about the older kids learn to serve. Let me tell you a real quick story that illustrates this. When I was involved with the camp in Murray County, Tennessee, Murray Christian Camp, we had a young lady who was an all-state basketball player, went on to Lipscomb. Nina Houseman was her name, and I've told her that I use this story so she won't be embarrassed about it. But Nina was an all-state basketball player, and when it came to girls' basketball competition, everybody knew her team was going to win, but they didn't. Because when it got down to the semifinal and the final game and the tournament brackets, she sat on the sideline and let the little kids play.
How about that?
And that's the kind of lessons that our kids are exposed to. A typical day at our camp, and it's not that atypical from camps, up at 7 o'clock, clean your cabin, make your bed up, get everything ready, get ready for breakfast. Flag raising at the flagpole, 7:45, with a devotional, Bible reading, prayer, led by the campers. Pledge of Allegiance, always with the flag raising. Then breakfast.
Okay.
After breakfast, back to the cabin, get your Bible, that kind of thing. Bible class. Then chapel. Then we have chapel. So for 2 hours in the morning, just about there in Bible class, chapel.
Okay.
Then we have about an hour, 45 minutes sports time. It's lunchtime. After lunch, another Bible class. Then in the afternoon, we have sports activities and other kind of water activities, water balloon fight and that kind of thing. And then supper time, and after supper, have chapel again.
Okay.
And then we have nighttime activities, initiation, where they, I don't know, they put shaving cream on somebody's nose and you throw Cheetos at it, see how many you get, silly games like that. And then after that, back to the cabin devo, lights out at 11 o'clock.
Okay. I know that prior to going on the air, we were talking about some of the things that make for a good camp, one of which is good Bible classes, another is good counselors, a third is good food. How do you guys go about identifying the right kind of person to serve as a counselor?
Well, for our process, we've got a great group of guys that have been coming to camp, some since the very beginning. Okay. And so we try to look at them, and then we look at these younger guys that are coming in, graduating from school, and we try to make sure we get that kind of stuff done. The model counselor is one who's going to do what we were just talking about. Show the kids about service, show them how to be a leader, show them the respect. And I want to go back, if I can, we talk about service. I didn't mention in the afternoons, there's always a block of time during the free time that is your choice to do service projects. Okay. And this year, I just give you a couple of things. This is what they accomplished in their service projects. They made 295 safe activity packets. They made 95 blankets that they are taking to Vanderbilt, to the Children's Hospital. 300 cards of encouragement, 200 journals for folks, and then when they do things off campus. So it truly, Horizons is about learning to lead and learning to serve. Now, back to the counselor, sometimes you'll find a bad apple. But if we know about a problem they're having, we can correct the problem because we want to focus on, hey, this is not about us as adults. This particular camp is about the camper. And we've been successful. This year was the first year ever that we allowed the campers to give us a theme.
Really?
And we did that because we as adults know what we need, but we want to know what the kids needed. And so our topic was fear not less.
Okay.
And so we talked about all these aspects of things that you have fear of. I see we have a caller. I'll turn it back to you.
We do have Michael Light on the phone with us tonight. Michael, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate you being a part of our program. I understand that you have been involved in summer camps for at least 30 years.
Well, it's actually 20 years. It's 30 sessions. We're actually in camp right now, and we kind of got word that y'all were dealing with this subject tonight, and traded a few emails. Well, we just called in, and I'm thankful to hear y'all talking about it. I like the comments we just made about understanding the value of the counselors and how to set the tone for the entire camp sometime by the quality of individuals you have actually in the cabins with the kids to start with.
Absolutely. Talk a little bit about a typical day of camp life in Texas.
Well, of course, this week is 103 degrees, so the afternoons get pretty hot, but we roll them out. By 7:45, we have our first morning devotional. Then we have some calisthenics, get them warmed up. About 8, we go in for breakfast. After KP duty, we have at 9 o'clock, we have Bible classes, and we separate them. Those are boy-girl separate classes. Like this week, we're studying the book of James. Okay. And so you have that for an hour. Then we have activities from 10 to 11. That's roughly, we do Bible trivia every other day. We've got various athletic competitions and so forth that they engage in. Then at 11 o'clock, we have what we call the morning mini. It's a general assembly. And this week, all 4 sessions dealt with the blood of Christ, some aspect of his blood. Then noon, Our Bible class from 1:30 to 2:30 on the Apostles this week, but again, our study session after lunch. Then a 3-hour activity time. We have a pretty extensive arts and crafts department. Similar to what he was saying earlier, a lot of times the projects will be put together, sometimes going to with us, sometimes just back home to mom and dad and so forth.
Sure.
We have a pretty good-sized sports complex. We have a lot of tournaments. We do everything on a point system. We have a scripture quoting segment, Bible trivia segment, basketball tournament, softball, kickball, just on and on it goes, archery, etc. And they're always working toward whichever cabin on the boys' side and the girls' side has the most points wind up with a big ice cream supper on the last night, which happens to be tonight once it's over. Then we have services, worship at 7:15, followed by more activities from 8 to 9:30, devotional down by the creek, and then back to bed, catch a few Z's, and do it again the next day.
Wow, that's a busy, busy day.
Well, Michael has caught a really necessary thing when it comes to getting the kids involved in Bible trivia, activities, athletic activities and other things, even energy to clean their cabin and clean the mess hall.
Sure.
You give them points, make a competition out of it.
I like that.
And when you get a competition into it, isn't that right, Michael? Then they'll get fired up for it.
A lot of kids are very competitive.
Yes.
Yes.
Michael, I understand that you guys don't charge campers. Who underwrites the cost of your camp?
Well, we did our first one back in '97. Of course, it cost $75 to $100 a head back then. And after our first session, we came home and one of our elders said, "Guys, this is too good an event for anyone to miss because of financial restrictions." So we just decided back then for the congregation in Bangs, we switched to a 48-week budget. So in other words, every month I had 5 Sundays. That contribution went completely toward offsetting the cost of the camps. And they run today's economy about $30,000 a year, so about $12,000 to $15,000 a piece. So we began to do that years ago. Would not take any funds, and then if say you brought a handful of kids and y'all like what you saw, and the elders asked, "What can we do to help you?" I said, "Well, if you want to make a donation, you're welcome to." So over the years, there's probably been somewhere 30-40% of it now is supported by other congregations. Most of them fairly local. We've got about half our attendees within about a 200-mile radius. And then Dallas is pretty much the rest of them. So we have quite a few. We're out in central West Texas, so we have some rural towns out here, and then Dallas kind of fills in at Fort Worth, the bulk of the rest of them.
Okay. Do you guys, and this would, I guess, be a question for all of you guys, do you accept campers, particularly older campers, who are not members of the church?
Yes, sir, we sure
Absolutely.
do. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Christian camping can be
28 last year. That's right. We certainly everybody who's welcome.
Okay.
Christian camping can be, and it's been my experience, that it's one of the greatest evangelistic tools that's out there if the church will use it. And we do just like Michael does. Our elders pay for our kids to go to camp and to go to Horizons. Our families are never asked to pay for those activities like Horizons, CYC, Evangelism University, Horizons, and our summer youth camp. Our elders pay for all of that.
Don't you think, we talk about the climate of our country and the things that are ongoing today, and I always say kids are going to have fun. They want to have fun.
They want to have
and so
fun.
the question is, do you want them to have fun in a controlled environment or an uncontrolled? And so to me, summer camp is a great opportunity for them to grow spiritually, and those who are not members of the church to come in contact. There are kids today. I was talking to one of our elders the other day, and I said, have you ever thought it interesting in John chapter 9, when Jesus gave sight to the blind man, he asked him, "Do you believe in the Son of God?" And his response was, "Who is he, Lord, that I might believe in him?" And sometimes we assume knowledge, but there are kids today that have no knowledge of Jesus.
Well, you make an interesting point about the kids.
There are quite a few kids. There are even some that grew up in the church, depending on how weak the pulpit is. They might have some generic and general understanding, but that really can benefit from a solid week of specific, topic-driven, good, taught by well-versed men and women to really go deeper into principles they may not hear back at home, but they should too.
Well, Michael, one year our curriculum, and one of the things we were going to talk about is how to have good Bible classes. My experience has been you get the people in the area that are good writers, preachers, that go to camp with you, and you give them assignments, and they come up with the material, and it works so much better, just like Vacation Bible School works so much better than the published material. But one of the things that Michael was talking about, one of the most appreciated curriculum we had at Murray Christian Camp, and we redid it at
Yes, we
at
did.
Taylor Christian.
I remember that.
Was we had T-shirts that said, "I long to worship you," and that was our theme song.
Really?
And we studied worship. What is worship? The 5 acts of worship, and we got into that, and it was really great. And the kids came to me afterward and said, "That was the best week of camp we ever had." And so Michael's right. It's an opportunity to teach and instruct and bring them up in the nurture and
to
admonition of the
really
Lord.
lay a
Well, and
foundation.
if you'll pick your theme, and like y'all just did several years ago, we did one on evangelism.
Yeah.
And what we would do examples of evangelism. Then we did character studies of evangelists. And then every night during our services, we had sermons that were evangelistic.
Yeah.
So, and we even also had a class that year. We just, because of so much interest, we did an impromptu class at a different time frame on how to actually conduct a personal Bible study.
That's
so if you
great.
get a theme like that, you can generate a ton of interest.
That's right.
And again, I'm not against. We will do the moral topics about every 3rd or 4th year.
Yeah.
You'll go through dancing and smoking and the modesty and fornication and so forth. But you also have to try to deal with the whole gamut as best you can in that 4 or 5 year span you have to get them at least introduced to most of the broad themes of Christianity.
That's right.
One year, and I don't want to dominate this thing, let Ray talk, but one year, our theme, we were on Short Mountain Bible Camp, and it's a short mountain, 1,500 feet above the surrounding plain over in Woodbury, Tennessee. But our theme that year was "Give Me This Mountain," based upon in the book of Joshua, where Caleb comes to Joshua and says, "I don't want the easy part. Give me the mountain where the giants are." And so we use that as a theme, Michael, to encourage our kids to reach out and do the difficult things and take on the hard jobs.
I think so. And you know what? I can't help but think that maybe we sell our children short.
We do. You're exactly
they
right.
wouldn't be interested in spiritual things, and yet, from what I hear,
they are.
They're extremely excited and interested.
The key to the kids, and this was alluded to a moment ago, kids don't have structure at home anymore.
That's right.
Kids want structure.
They love it.
They thrive on this structure, and yeah, they'll complain about it, but down deep, they really like the fact that there's some structure at what they're doing, and so you go on. We talked about good Bible classes. Our theme, Fearless.
It was great.
I was actually able to speak on Tuesday morning, and Mike will maybe vouch for this, but most people think and know that I'm an encourager. Well, they assigned me the topic of discouragement. So and every speaker we had related, as an adult, their experience with something that they feared, which helps the kids understand, hey, the adults, they suffer the same things we do.
That's right.
So you're reaching down to their level. And that's the structure they want.
That's right.
That's what they want. They want to know, what do you suffer that I suffer?
Yeah.
Another angle that we picked up on over here is just the opposite side of the spectrum. It has really reinvigorated a lot of our older members. Like my average age cook is probably pushing 70.
Yeah.
How about that?
We have older members that they look forward to camp. They go cook. They go and help with arts and crafts. I've got one of my elders that also serves here with us in Bangs, who's 74. The class that he started with when they were in the 3rd grade, they're now sophomores. He's still counseling out in the heat 24 hours a day with his group of 14 high school boys. And it gives them something to look forward to. It has been really good for the congregation back in Bangs. All year there's chatter about the camp that's coming up, what we just did this year, what we're going to do next year. It's inspiring to us. It's probably done us more good than it has the kids, honestly, over the years.
I appreciate so much your zeal, and when you talk about involvement, I think one of the things that hurts the church sometimes is everyone is not involved like they should be, and to think that there are older, more mature members that sometimes feel like they're outcast because they're a certain age, and yet what you're saying is that these guys are right in the heart of the work.
Yeah. One of the things that we were talking about is common traits. If you listened and picked up on there what Michael was saying, their schedule's almost exactly like ours. Because you learn after a while, don't you, Michael, what works.
That's right.
And you just keep on doing it because it works.
It is sure trial and error. When I started, we did everything. The first camp I ever went to, I directed, and I assure you, I learned the hard way of what you better control some things, people control the camp. So you certainly have to, you tweak it a little bit every year and hopefully make it better every year. And of course, personnel, once you have good staff, good counselors, good teachers, good preachers, good cooks, you can't help but have a good camp.
Sounds to me like you guys have got this thing down to an art. Michael, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Appreciate your time. And
yes, sir. Thanks for having me, and God bless your work.
Hey, thank you, and
Same to you, Michael.
Appreciate all that you're doing with these kids.
Thank you very much. So continue to have a good night.
Hey, thank you so much. You know what? A lot of interesting thoughts emerging out of our conversation tonight. And there are so many questions that obviously come up in the context of camp. One of the things that I like is using older, more mature members, because, you know, in Titus chapter 2, Paul talked about the aged men, the aged women teaching the younger men, the younger women. And sometimes I think that the younger folks aren't exposed to the maturity and the wisdom that comes from being around older people.
One of the things we're doing, we started last year, this will be our second year. We not only have our summer camp, we also have a family retreat where everybody's invited. And we had 70 and 80-year-old people there. And what I wanted to do with this was foster intergenerational activity. And I got one picture that I used on the announcement PowerPoint to show this is what we wanted to accomplish and what we did. It's a picture of an 80-year-old lady, and she's sitting at a table with 4, 5, 9, 10, 11-year-old girls putting a jigsaw puzzle together.
How about that?
And got another picture of a guy, they're playing cards, and this guy, he's old, as old as I am, he's mid-60s, and there's a bunch of teenage boys sitting around and they're playing cards together. So there's a lot of things you can do with this besides just young
That's right.
Youth camp.
And Ray, I can't help but think about these young folks are the future of the church.
Well, not only that, Mike, let me share with you this. When I was directing camp and the guys took over from me, we still do this. We give a copy of the camp application, and Ray remembers this. Every kid was in his cabin or in his Bible class got a copy of the camp application. And on there it said the parents and all this kind of thing, and whether the child was a member of the church or not. Mm-hmm. And when I was in Murray Christian Camp, Kevin White, he always had the oldest boys' cabin, and he would look down that list, and he would get the older boys, experienced boys, off to the side, not to embarrass anybody, get them off to the side and say, y'all know that he's not a member of the church.
Okay.
And they would get together and they'd pray about it, and they would ask the Lord to help them, and they would make it the goal to see that young man baptized before they went home.
Outstanding.
And we were talking about evangelism, and we went away from it, but I want to come back to it for just a minute. 1 year at camp, we had 36 baptisms.
Wow. That's amazing.
And we never went to camp we didn't have some baptisms.
Now, at Horizons, we'll average 25 to 30 a year of baptisms, and then you on top of that, probably 100 restorations.
Is that right?
And so what that tells me is these kids want to be helped. They're reaching out. And so as they're at camp, it gives us that opportunity one-on-one to do that.
Well, I think so. We got a question that's come in. Is it okay to clap and dance to our songs when it's just VBS or summer camp? How would you guys respond to that? Because you guys are in the heart of the work itself.
Ray, you want to deal with that? You want me to deal with it?
Well, I'll just throw a thought out. I'll let you search your Bible over there. I believe part of the reason that we see these trends popping up in the church is because we don't take camp as serious parts of worship. Summer Bible camp and our worship periods and our devotional periods, those are worship.
Right.
And you know, if it's not something we would do on Sunday morning or Sunday night in worship, I think, and I believe the Bible teaches the fact that it would be wrong to do it there.
I think that's a great answer.
And we always, I'm sure all Christian camps strive to do this, to maintain the dignity and the respect and the spirit. You know, we're supposed to worship in spirit and in truth, the spirit of the worship assembly. But then there are times that you get together and, you know, you want to sing songs like Are You Happy? If you're happy, you know it. Sure. And clap your hands, stomp your feet, and this kind of thing. Somebody says, well, why do you do that? Why is it okay there? Well, there is a distinction between the activities of worship and other times, but this thought struck me a long time ago when Paul was talking about love in 1 Corinthians 13. And he was explaining or trying to get the Corinthians to see that there's some things that are involved in maturity. And he says, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. You know, I've known a lot of kids that grew up at camp. I'm old enough to see now the kids I had at camp, their kids being there, and my grandkids are there. And you know, I don't know a single one of those older boys that I had in camp, and older girls, that want to have clapping and dancing in the worship assembly.
And
they make the distinction.
They make the distinction.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think great comments. I've got another question that's come in. Sometimes it seems like the rush to baptize or the rush to baptism is more about peer pressure and acceptance among their peers than it is about a lifelong commitment to Christ. How do you make sure that they're being baptized the right way or they have the proper understanding? How would you respond to that?
Okay, as the camp director, and the guy that took over from me follows the same policy. Number one, we never baptize anybody without talking to the parents first. That's number one. We never baptize anybody without sitting down with that child, away from everybody else, with a mature, if it's a girl, a mature lady, or even preacher, whatever. And one of the things I talk about is commitment, and to help them understand that this is commitment. We face the same problem at our congregations.
Sure.
You know, when one 10-year-old boy is baptized, we got others that won't be baptized. So we deal with it the same way. But another thing that we did, and we still do it at our camp, we never have an invitation. Even that year we baptized 36 people. We never have an invitation. We do let the kids know that if you're thinking about being baptized, get with your counselor, talk with your counselor, and they'll help you. But we were very, very sensitive to this point because we're very much aware as staff that you can get kids tired and you can get them excited and you can get them to do anything. And so we were very conscious of that, and we worked to make sure that they're being baptized for the right way and the right reasons. And we had a little brochure somebody came up with, am I ready to be baptized at camp? A little worksheet.
Okay.
And we would take the kids through the worksheet.
Okay.
And a lot of times, at the end of that worksheet, they'd say, I think I'll wait.
Okay. I think that's a good way to handle it.
And that's similar to how we handle it at Horizons. We do offer an invitation, but we take them before we baptize them. You know, the discussion is with their youth minister that brought them, or another adult. So it's not something that we try to keep the peer pressure and the emotional side down.
Sure.
And you do that through this conversation. So that's how it's handled with us at Horizons.
Okay. I think
very
those
similar.
are great answers. Let me ask this. How do you deal with modesty today? Because you've got, I know that you've got kids
I'll start this discussion. We have more problems with modesty from our counselors than we do our campers.
Yeah, sometimes that's true.
And it seems like we have to send more of the younger children or younger counselors back, even though we have a policy which is very similar to the policy that Freed Hardeman has in their handbook. We do allow them to wear shorts. We used to you could wear shorts at Horizons at all, you know, middle of July, 100 degrees. But, you know, we've relaxed that. But there's a standard you have to set. You got a certain length on a skirt. So if you tell kids and you give them a set of guidelines, generally they'll follow those guidelines.
I agree.
I'm not going to say not always, but generally.
Yeah, and that's the way we deal with it at camp. We let them know ahead of time. It's in the application. And the camper has to sign the application that says, I've read the rules and I accept them. And part of the rules is, and we define what modesty is by being touching the top of the knee when standing up your shorts. Of course, that, you know, you sit down, they come up, and that's fine, but that's part of it. But
I think when you lay it out,
if you have somebody that's got immodest apparel as a director, you deal with it. You don't let it go.
You pull them aside. Somebody pulls them aside, and that's the responsibility of our dorm supervisors at Horizons. They're responsible for whoever comes out of their dorm. They're to make sure that they're dressed appropriately.
I got you. Another question that's come in. Sometimes kids want to clap after a baptism. How do you prevent this from happening?
You want me to tell them what we did this year?
Go ahead.
We started this year at Horizons. After a baptism, Jerry Elder, we baptized out in the cattle trough, out in front of the flagpole, in front of the sports center. And Jerry and Webb have their Horizon entertainment. What Jerry did is he brought the microphone down, and as soon as the individual was brought up out of the water,
Started singing.
he would start a song
That's what we did.
and then have a prayer.
That's what we
Way to
did.
do it.
And it worked every single time.
It's amazing that the kids pick up on that. It's amazing because they say, wait a minute.
Structure. It goes back to structure.
Why are we not? Well, okay, this singing's better, you know.
I think that's that is a good tool.
Yeah,
It really is.
Yeah.
Another question that's come in. Oftentimes you have boyfriend-girlfriend situations at camp, and I'm sure that's very common.
No doubt.
How do you keep things proper while at the same time encouraging the kids to marry Christians?
You go first.
Okay. I directed Murray Christian Camp for 13 years, 15 sessions. After I'd been doing it about, well, let me think. This young man is now a minister in Columbia, Tennessee, and so anyway, he was an elder son. He started dating an elder's daughter when they were in the 7th grade. And they would stay together, and they were they were good kids. They would stay together, and the very last thing I would say every night, I would come to them because they'd be standing by the flagpole, and I'd say, "Good night, John." Say "Good night, John." Say "Good night, Natalie," and make them go
their separate ways.
Go their separate ways. But we would tell them on the front end, "You're not to. We don't mind you sitting together in chapel. Right. We don't, but you're not to seclude yourself. And when it comes time to do other things, you do the other things." And we've seen, in fact, we've got a missionary coming back from Africa to Lehman Avenue. He met his wife at summer camp.
How about that?
And we just had a youth minister, associate minister that left us. He met his wife at summer camp.
Okay.
So you don't want to discourage it, and that's a great question. You don't want to discourage it, but you got to keep it under control. And that's your staff.
And of course, that's your staff. And at Horizons, we may face that more deeply than a summer camp that's at a campsite, but we do the same thing. You lay it out and you say, here's where you can go, here's where you can't go. And most of the time, our kids, they stay in four, 5, 6 to a group, so we don't really see that trouble. I only know of one situation where that was an issue, and that was back before I ever was on the planning committee, so I didn't have to deal with it then.
I had to send staff home one time for that reason.
Really?
We had a young lady and a young man. They were both in college, and they'd been dating for a while. And every time we went to find them, they were all sitting somewhere holding hands, looking at each other, googly-eyed, And finally, I asked them. I said, "You guys going to work? Or you going to romance?" And they looked at each other. "Well, I guess we're going to romance." I said, "Go home." Good. It was on Tuesday morning. Send them home.
So how do you deal with? Obviously, whenever you have people together, kids together, there are going to be problems. There are going to be things that come up that you have to deal with. So how do you deal with kids that create trouble or cause trouble?
Well, the first thing you do, and we didn't talk as much about staff. We talked about what makes a good staff person. One of the things that I never, ever did is put college-age kids in the cabin as counselors. They had other jobs, sports director, canteen director, something along that line, because I wanted mature people in there with those kids. And another thing, I didn't try to hide my weakest counselor in the youngest boys or youngest girls' cabin. That's where I put my best counselor, because if they didn't have a good time, they'd never come back.
That's right.
And my second best counselor was in the oldest boys' cabin.
Okay.
But we would talk about that. We'd have staff meetings. We'd talk about that. And we would say, now look, head these things off before they become a problem.
That's right.
And on top of that, we would have people, generally would have people, and they would have this at Horizons. You would have a youth minister or a deacon or a preacher from the congregation where they are, and they might come to you and say, keep your eye on so-and-so.
Okay.
And so you try to head it off.
And what we do, we try to handle it up front, the counselors. But if it gets to a point where that counselor doesn't feel comfortable, then we will go to the youth minister or whoever is with them, and we will let them know, hey, this is an issue we're having. Can you talk to them? And even, unfortunately, the youth minister will only have to say, I'm going to call your mom or call your dad, and that problem stops. Yeah. And you don't want to call their mom or dad, because the idea, and Mike has always said this, as a parent, if you don't hear from your child, don't worry about them. And so that's the goal that we all have. If you don't hear from them, then he's having a great week, or she's having a great week.
Well, and you mentioned before going on the air that you don't allow those kids to have cell phones.
No. If they bring them, they're told ahead of time to leave them at home. If they bring them, we take them up. Okay. And they don't need them. And they say, well, I might have to call your mother. No, you don't need to call your mother. And if it's an emergency, staff's got phone, and there's a landline at camp. No problem. The first year we did that, it caused a stink with some of the older kids.
I'm sure.
The next year, no problem.
No problem
They
at all.
knew what was coming, no problem. And that's the other thing. Michael, when we was talking, he said you develop a staff that comes year after year, and they get used to the routine and what's expected, but the kids do too.
Sure.
And the kids do. And I'll tell you, you said I was involved with camp since 1973, and last year I went to camp was 2008. And I always ask people, in all those years, you know how many kids I sent home? 0.
How about that?
Because we would deal with those problems. And generally, when you sat down with a kid and dealt with a problem, the kid would come to you almost in tears.
Is there a particular age that works best for campers?
Well, now Horizon's a little different. Because
You have to be completed 6th grade to completed 12th grade for Horizons. Now,
Okay.
so what? And the reason it's that way for Horizons is we have a curriculum that we work. It's a 6-year curriculum. So
Okay.
every year they come back, they're covering in their speaking classes. They're covering different things. And we're building on an aspect in this curriculum. So Horizons is a little different than the camp that Mike worked with.
Now, I've been involved with camps that would have a week for, say, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, and everybody in camps that age group. I first thought that's the best way to do it. I actually think now the best way to do it is you allow kids from, we do from 3rd grade to high school.
Okay.
And because as we talked about before we went on the air, you get that activity and that interaction because those little kids, they think those teenagers hung the most.
They do.
Exactly.
And whatever they're doing, they want to do it. And we tell the older kids that. These little kids are watching you, and they're learning from you, and they want to be like you. And they generally step up. And like that young lady I was talking about earlier that didn't want to play basketball, I tell you, that impacted some kids.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
Do you see, I know that you have to see raw talent among some of the young folks. Do you try to nurture that talent?
Oh, yes.
And encourage them to?
Yes.
I'll give you a great example. About 4 years ago, we began on Thursday, starting in an afternoon. Those young men that were in the senior high, the 12th grade class, they actually conducted a devotional period where you had usually it was 4 young men speaking, song leading. The whole thing was done by them. Now this year, we actually changed it up, and we moved that session to our morning devotional.
Okay.
Where all of the young people were there. Because what happened is the girls would have their devotional on Thursday afternoon, camper-led devotional, and then the guys, a lot of times the girls wanted to go get ready to go to the banquet or whatever we're having. So, but we moved that to Thursday morning. So we're teaching them, and then we're seeing the cream of the crop rise to the top.
Yeah.
And the 4 young men that spoke this year were probably, and I don't want to offend anybody that's been to Horizon before that's spoken there, but these 4 were probably a notch above. And I think that is because this was the first year that they had gone through the full 6 years of this curriculum that we did. As a matter of fact, my friend Van Zandt, he teaches one of those senior high classes, and when I went in to talk to him about, well, who are you going to get to speak tomorrow morning? He said, well, I got 4. They're all equal. I don't know who I'm going to pick. So he and another teacher had to take pieces of paper, yes, no, no, no. And it was just like casting lots. Luck of the draw. And that's what we're striving for. Yeah. That's what we want at Horizons.
Now, in our camp, and I'm sure in these other camps, we have 2 chapels, one in the morning, one at night. And about 10 years ago, we decided that we would give all of the baptized boys a card Sunday night, just like they give you at church. Sure. What are you willing to do? And we would take that card and we would assign the prayers, the song leading, the Bible readings, and even the lessons in our morning chapel to the campers, if we had enough. Now, if we didn't have enough, one of the staff would do it. But it was amazing to see from year to year the ones that would do that, the progress.
The growth.
And the growth, yeah. And let me tell you, I have, it's come through my camps, and it's not because of me. I'm not bragging because of me. I'm just, we've got a Christian college president.
How about that?
We've got about 5 that are preachers, and about 4 of those, the first lesson they delivered was at camp.
How about that?
And the beauty of that is it's a much less threatening environment than standing up there with all the grandmothers and everybody out there.
Absolutely. It's got to be.
Horizon shows me the future of the church with gospel preaching and sound gospel preaching. The church is in good hands.
It is.
The church is in good hands because I see it up front.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you guys are really laying a foundation for the future.
Oh yeah, that's
the whole purpose.
That's the whole purpose. I was going to read a scripture in Matthew chapter 19. Jesus says, when he was rebuked about somebody wanted him to bless the child, and he says, "Permit the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven." And there's a question up here that talks about using money, and I'm usurping your authority here, about using money for the church treasury for funding games at camp each summer. Who would stand in the way of a young child coming to Jesus? If we can have this camp and we can touch children in a way that they can't be touched because they see youth ministers, they see preachers, they see other adults in a completely different environment than at church, and they see them living. And they don't see them just with a coat and a tie on Sunday morning. They see them living. They see them eating. They see them dealing with problems. They see them sweating. They see them tired and wore out and how they deal with people. And these are learning experiences. And the fun and games that's secondary. That's secondary to every camp I've ever been involved. The key is the Bible classes and the chapels and the spiritual activities.
I would trade my 4 hours average sleep a night during Horizons. I would not trade that for any other feeling in the world. And I'm a little more direct than Mike. When someone asks about the church treasury being used for fun and games, I would challenge that person and say, come and see what we do.
Yeah.
Come and see and experience what we're doing firsthand. We had a gentleman move into our congregation about 3 months ago, and he wants to know what we're involved in.
Yeah.
And so I just simply told him when we have visitor night, usually on Wednesday night, I said, just come and see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just come and see. And you'll see what it's all about.
And again, Acts 2:42.
Yeah.
They continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and in fellowship. And fellowship, of course, obviously would involve a number of things, but kids are kids.
Yeah.
And they're open they're like sponges. You can teach them, but they also have to have some recreational time.
And they got to burn off some of that energy.
Oh, that's right.
And I used to tell people that raise questions about a fellowship hall as opposed to maybe a room for the young where they had young folks where they had a ping pong table. And whether it was right to buy the ping pong table and put it in that empty classroom. And I'd say, now wait a minute, we spent all this money to have a fellowship hall because the old folks like to get together and eat. Well, the young people like to get together and play ping pong. The young people like to get together and go to camp. And so these are activities that are on their level that they appreciate and enjoy. And again, going back to that example I used earlier about the older girl, all-state basketball player that stepped aside, it gives them opportunities to be impacted and to impact other young people in a very powerful way. I've seen it, and I'm like, the guy that helped build our camp, he had never been to camp. He went one time, and the next thing you know, he's building a camp.
Yeah, it makes me think about at Olive Branch, we have on Friday nights during football season, fifth quarter.
There you go.
That's a great
good example, great program.
We provide food, drinks, and then at the end of the evening, we have a devotional. But it is a tremendous atmosphere. As a matter of fact, we had a family that began attending because their daughter had come to our fifth quarter and liked it so much that she brought her family. And so to me, you can use that evangelistically as well.
Sure.
Another question that's come in. What is the greatest spiritual change that you've seen in a camper, and what brought about that change?
Let me tell you 2 stories real quick. 2 stories, one about a camper, another, because camp, I've learned over the years, is not just for campers. First story, young boy that graduated with my son in high school, same class, they played basketball together and everything. It was when they were in the 8th grade. And I noticed this boy was kind of getting involved with the wrong people. And I noticed he didn't sign up for camp. So I went to him and I called him by name. I'll call him Billy. That's not his name. Names are changed to protect the innocent. And I said, Billy, I hadn't got an application on you. Well, I'm not going to camp this year. Oh, come on, Billy. You know you really enjoy it. Come on, fill out an application. Well, he didn't. But about 3 days before camp, he called me up and said, I've changed my mind. I'd really like to go to camp. But we were full. Every bed in camp was taken. But I told him, I said, you come on, Billy, we'll find a place. Great. We found a place. That boy turned around, he's a deacon in the church now.
How about that? How about
I
that?
mean, he may have turned around anyway. I don't know. But
still.
I look back on it and I think that really had, and we had our 50th anniversary, and that young man came up to me, gave me the biggest hug. It was like a home week. I know that camp had an impact on it. Other illustration about a camper, about a staff person. A good friend of mine, fellow preacher, we're always looking for staff people. He came to me and recommended this person as staff member. I didn't know him, but I said, and we'll call this guy Greg. I didn't know Greg. I said, well, based on your recommendation, I'll take him. Well, 2 days later, I got a telephone call. This mama said, is Greg going to be at camp? I said, yeah, I guess so. Well, my kid ain't coming then. I said, why? Well, you didn't hear what happened at the ball field last night. I said, no, I don't guess so. Well, they kicked him out of the league because he got mad and started fussing at the umpires. And they didn't kick him out of the game, they kicked him out of the league. So I hung up and I called the friend that recommended it, and I said, we got a problem. So he and I called Greg, came to my office, we sat down and talked. And we told him, said, Greg, we want to see this situation redeemed. Mm-hmm. And I said, you've put us in a bad situation. He almost broke down crying. And he said to me, he said, well, I still want to go to camp. What I need to do? I said, well, you got to make this thing right. Mm-hmm. He did. Next service, he went forward, had prayer. He went back to the baseball field, got the microphone out of the press box, and stood out on the ball field and apologized to the people. He came and became one of my best staffers and stayed with me all the time. When I retired from that camp, they had a little special thing for me on Thursday night. And they gave me a plaque and all this kind of stuff. But they allowed any one of the staff to come up and say anything they wanted to. That guy came up to me, buried his head on my shoulder, bawled like a baby, and said, Mike, you believed in me when nobody else would.
How about that?
You know,
those are the stories that really make you appreciative of camp.
Right. And I'm going to tell too, real quick. And one of them was about a young lady who has become near and dear to my heart. She's almost like a daughter to me. 3 years ago, her mother called and said, my daughter is not going to be able to come to camp. And the concern was, she doesn't know anybody. And my lovely wife, who takes care of all those applications and spends countless hours, she told the mother, she said, your daughter is coming. We're not going to cancel. That was 3 years ago. This young lady, this very week, is in Guyana on a mission trip.
How about that?
And she never would have went before.
How about that?
Yeah. And in the second story, it also deals with a camper, and it deals with a young man from South Jackson. I moved there 7 years ago, and there was this young, quiet, reserved, he wouldn't talk. He would smile at you. We got him to go to Horizon 6 years ago. He graduated from high school this year. He was one of the four that was wanted, that really needed to be speaking. So I've seen him go from a quiet, reserved individual to maturing into a young leader in the church. And I tell those two stories. I don't mention names because I could tell you probably 50, 100, or 200 more just like that.
What I think really stands out is the fact that you're putting quality people in an environment where they can really thrive, and you're giving them quality time. And we talk about the home, and look at our nation. We always say, as the home goes, so goes the nation. Our nation's in trouble because the home's in trouble.
Exactly.
And so this is a way to somehow try to start at ground zero and build upward. And
you've really hit the nail on the head. We're concerned about the future of the church. And if we're concerned about the future of the church, then we've got to support programs like Horizons. We've got to support programs like Christian Youth Conference in Gatlinburg every year. We've got to support programs like Lads to Leaders. And we've got to support Christian camps, because the old saying that somebody is teaching your kids how to live, what to believe, and how to act. Now, who's teaching them that?
Wow.
You're going to put them and the beauty of camp and Horizons is you put them in, and the thing I like about camp, you get them away from everything. You get them out in the country, because all these camps are out in the country, somewhat rustic. They're not as rustic as they used to be.
Even Horizons is kind of in the country.
Yeah, you get them out away from everything, and they spend time with their peers, all of whom are trying to impact one another and draw one another. And I'm like Ray, go see what goes on.
Don't you believe that it's an investment
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
future? We talk about
Absolutely.
investing.
That's what our elders see it as. It's a better return. You know, we'll spend $700, $800, $1,000 to pay a preacher to come in, then put him up in a motel, another $400. And we get a much better return off of an equal amount of money sending kids to Horizons.
And your kids get more out of Horizons than they do
yeah.
the gospel meeting.
Without a doubt.
So,
Another question come in. How do you handle swimming time and lifeguards, and then separating the boys and girls to keep them, I guess, from being exposed to
I can give an easy answer to that. We don't have swimming pools at Freed Artemis anymore, so we don't have to deal with it.
Well,
but when we did, the girls swam at a certain time they swam, and the guys had a certain time they swam, because we had a pool.
Yeah.
But we don't have that problem at Horizons right now.
Every camp I've ever been involved with, that's how they handle it. Now, Big Reedy Christian Camp does not have a swimming pool, but we have water activities, water balloons. This was great. We have our camp actually sets almost a mile off the road, so we had to run a 3-inch water line back to the camp, and it circles around the camp and ends back behind the girls' cabins. Some guy brought a fire hose, like with a nozzle on it, and hooked it up to that thing.
How about that?
And I mean, the kids went wild.
I bet they had fun. I bet they. I know.
But we keep them modestly dressed. If we don't have a swimming pool, whatever you wear during the day, that's what you wear to water activities.
Absolutely.
They don't go get a
That's a
bathing
good
suit
general
on.
rule. There's
Yeah.
no bathing suits.
No bathing suits.
Listen, I appreciate everything you guys have said. Very quickly, we've got about a minute left. What advice would you give to an eldership who is maybe contemplating investing in something like this?
Do it. That's, get and go with another group that's established for a while, and then get out on your own. Build a camp, or get involved with a good, like West Texas camp that we were talking to with Michael, or Mid-South Youth Camp or something like that.
I didn't mention Mid-South.
Get involved with
another agent of Freed Artemis right out there.
And invest in your young people.
So what would you say? Right?
My biggest thing is encourage your kids to involve themselves as well as much as you invest yourself.
Absolutely.
I always tell parents, if their kid doesn't want to go to camp, I say, look, you're the parent. Tell them you have to go this year. If you don't like it, I'll never make you go again.
Absolutely.
That works.
Every time. Because
Mike
once
and-
you get them there, they'll come back.
That's right. Mike and Ray, thank you so much for being a part of our program.
I enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thank you so much for being a part. We look forward to seeing you again next Thursday night. Until then, God bless you.